Hey friends, welcome back to the Consistency Corner podcast. I'm your host, Ruthie Sterrett. And in today's episode, we're going to be chatting with my friend, Bethany Zachman. And this is a really fun conversation, especially for CEO moms and founders in our community. Bethany is the founder of the Wildbloom Creative Studio, a brand and web designer who specializes in helping mompreneurs create brands that align with the life they're building. Bethany and I are diving into why brand clarity, visual consistency, and strategic social media presence isn't just a nice to have, but an essential if you want to grow without burnout. If you've been feeling like your brand is stuck in your head and you're ready to lead with it and have more confidence, this conversation is absolutely for you. And if you're ready to connect with other CEOs who are growing their brands with intention and living mom life, you've got to join us in our next social media mixer. It's a fun, casual way to collaborate, connect, and build relationships with fellow founders who get it. Head on over to Instagram at ruthie.starrett and just DM me the word mixer for the link to register. Now, let's get into my conversation with Bethany. Bethany, I am so excited to chat with you today and have you as a guest here on the Consistency Corner podcast. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, I feel like it really started when I became a mom myself and I was trying to work full time and my son had tons of health challenges. And so I realized I needed to redefine what my plans were and find a way to work from home. So that's where my business kind of started. That was about 9 years ago. And I actually started as a VA while I taught myself more of the graphic design and brand and visual work. And so, because my background is actually in psychology, but it's been really interesting how I've been able to utilize that as I honed in on my graphic design skills. So I would say it started as a VA, but then I started to realize that I really had a passion for helping other moms who were going through something similar that I had gone through. They had kids and it looked different than what they thought. Or they were a stay-at-home mom and they're like, actually, I need something more that's just for me. Or maybe they were in corporate and they were like, I need to be home with my kids more. So that kind of started a passion because I had walked along that journey. And so then I switched to working with just mompreneurs about 2 years ago. And it's been the best switch because it's amazing working with other moms who are just kind of like doing the dang thing and getting it done and juggling all the hats and being able to empathize and just help them along on that journey.
Yeah, I remember when you and I first met, we chatted about that somebody had once told you that targeting or niching into mompreneurs was not a good business decision. Can you talk a little bit about how you were able to follow your gut and do it anyway?
Yeah, well, I'm going to be honest. I listened to that advice for about 6 months, but it just didn't feel aligned and it didn't feel in my heart. So my job before starting this business, I did work one-on-one coaching moms. So I've always had a heart for moms and women. And so I actually started doing some subconscious reprogramming because something wasn't feeling in alignment. And that kind of gave me the tools and the bravery to be like, I need to start showing up what feels right in my heart. And so after about 6 months, I was like, not going to take that advice. It doesn't matter. What other people say, I need to follow my heart. And also I realized too that I wasn't in it for this advice came from someone who was making like millions of dollars. And I realized that wasn't my path. That wasn't my goal. And so maybe to them, I wasn't going to make that amount of money. But then I realized well, that was never my goal in the first place. So that allowed me to kind of take that different direction.
Yeah. And I love that you talked about doing some kind of mindset work and subconscious reprogramming because as entrepreneurs and moms, we make 10,000 decisions a day. And sometimes it can feel like the easy button, the shortcut is just to listen to what somebody else is telling us to do. But if it's not in alignment with your values, your vision, your mission, it's not going to work for you, right?
Yes. And that's what I found for those 6 months that I did listen to outside. It wasn't successful and it wasn't working. So I kind of had that moment where okay, something needs to change.
Yeah. So I am curious, when you are working with a client, how do you kind of get into that brand, mission, vision, and the heart behind their brand and their business goals so that you're able to approach their visuals in a way that creates emotional connection that actually resonates with their audience?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of noise out there about what a brand is. And a lot of times what we think is it's just the visuals, right? It's just the logo and the color palette, but it really is so much more than that. And so when I work with clients, the first step is always brand strategy, where we go and do a deep dive of like who they are, what their business is, who they're serving, their mission, vision, all the things you mentioned, because before we even get to the visuals, there's all the psychology behind the visuals, the colors, the typography, all of that evokes emotions, sends certain messages. We need that groundwork and to really understand who they are before we can even do the visuals.
Yeah. And it's important to like dive into that. And it can be so helpful to dive into it with another person because you have so many of those details swirling around in your brain. What's the biggest shift that often you see your clients like kind of experience when they move from DIYing their brand to a professional and intentional brand strategy with somebody who does this for a living?
Yeah, I think the main thing is the confidence and consistency, really, because now that they have the strategy, they have brand guidelines, it is taking away all of that insecurity or imposter syndrome because they have it all in a framework and they just have to implement it. So then I see their confidence changes, they're showing up more, and then that leads to more sales, right? Because they are more credible, they're more trustworthy, they're showing up and people can feel that energy.
Yeah, and it's like building the right foundation for the house, right?
Yeah,
And it's not necessarily fun and exciting to dig the footer and to like build the basement. Like I'm trying to like make up construction terms like I know what I'm talking about over here, but it's fun to pick out the light fixtures and the paint colors, but we can't get to that until we've built the foundation, right?
correct. Yes.
Yeah. So for a business owner who's like growing and they're maybe seeing some success, they know that they've got a good strategy and a good product and they also know that they need to bring on some team and some support. Why do you think it's important for them to have that brand out of their head and on paper so that other people can experience it as well?
Yeah, well, I think especially if you're growing and building a team, you all need to be on the same page, right? And so if it's just in the founder's head, that's where we start to get really inconsistent with our messaging and our visuals. And then that can have a negative effect on your business, right? Because people don't trust businesses that seem scattered or disorganized or all over the place. So I think it's really important to have that framework out on paper for everyone to follow. Things like brand voice, brand personality, like how you're speaking, all of that matters too, besides the visuals.
Yes, so much so. And I actually think when we think about marketing, I talk to founders about the internal customer and the external customer. And we typically think about marketing to the external customer, who you want your ideal client to be. But the internal customer, your team, is so important. And so having that information for them to be able to absorb and fully understand, like you said, the voice, the values, the brand history, where the brand, how it maybe it has evolved, a really deep dive on who the ideal client is. I mean, I saw that in my corporate career that I was working for a really big organization and in the like high level management suite, there was disagreement on who the ideal customer was. Well, then we have problems because we're not all talking to and working towards the same thing. So those are so important things. And it's something that I have seen founders go through as they build team, the inconsistency that can happen when we don't have that solid brand foundation.
Yeah, and I think when it's just you, it's a little bit easier. But to your point, when you start adding more people, you do all need to be on the same page and have a same understanding.
Yeah. So when it comes to marketing and showing up digitally, obviously your website is very important and you do web design, social media also very important because the world is on social media. People are on social media. And I don't think there's a one size fits all answer for this, but I'd love to hear your perspective of like, where do you start? And I don't necessarily even mean for like a brand new business, but like maybe somebody who's ready to invest, they're ready to stop DIYing. What do we invest in first?
Well, is the question between the website versus social media and brand
Yeah.
is already done?
Oh, that's a good question. So I would say the brand is not done,
Okay,
but we're going to do it and then we can do one or the other because we can't do it all at once. So what do we do
got
first?
it. Okay, got it. So brand is definitely number one. So that
Yeah.
is, we're doing that. I think that this might be different than what other designers say, but think I'm going to lean towards social media just because I feel like taking time there gives you a little bit of practice before you go and invest in the website. You're going to start seeing what works, what doesn't work. You're going to practice using your new brand, your new messaging, and things like that. And I do think a lot of people find businesses on social media, but then next step does need to be the website because they are going to go there to check your credibility, to check that you are who you say you are, and all of those things.
Yeah, I love what you said about like you can test some things on social media. It's a lighter lift in terms of making changes, tweaking messaging, figuring out not only what the audience resonates with, but like what feels good for you to say and create. And so then once you're confident in that, investing in your website becomes a smarter investment, because if you're not confident in it and we do this whole like redesign of our website, you might find in 6 months you need to do it again.
Yeah. Yes. And we like to avoid that.
Yeah, for sure. So social media, like you said, there are a lot of people who find business on social media, or I like to tell clients, maybe they're not finding you in terms of like discovering you, but they're checking you out after they've discovered you somewhere else to determine if you're the right person for them, the right vibe. I'd love to hear what collaborations have looked like for you on social media and kind of how it's fit into your business.
Yeah, I feel like the main thing that I love, I don't know if this is fully collaborations, but I love social media to like just connect with other women and moms. And one of my favorite things is just like reaching out to women-owned businesses that I love and just like empowering them and telling them for no other reason, just because I actually believe that. And this just happened a month ago or so. I just reached out to her randomly and we just connected. And then she came back. She's like, well, I actually need help with my website. And so that's not necessarily a collab, but just one of the things I love to use social media for is I feel like when you approach it for relationships and connection, it's a whole different type of experience for you and for your clients. But in terms of collabs, let's see. I am doing a collab right now with another mom-owned business that is kind of doing a movement to talk about maternal mental health. And so we created merch, right? And so it's been great because not only does she get exposed to all of my mom clients, but then I'm getting exposed to a bunch of moms that are purchasing her merch. So it helps us both grow our audience, and then we get to connect and again just meet other like-minded women, even if it's not to hire me or for me to hire them, but just to get connected and surround yourself with a community of women that are going through the same things.
Yeah, for sure. And you and I connected on Threads. Like I had put out there on Threads, like, hey, I'm looking for other business owners who serve moms. Like, let's connect. And so fun that you saw that post on Threads and we started chatting on Instagram. And now, knowing that we serve similar audiences, we've talked about ways to collaborate in terms of like having you do some visual design or social media templates for my clients. So I just think it's so fun, like you said, to use it in an organic way that creates relationships. And I love to remind everybody, it's social first, media second, right?
Love that. Yep.
Yeah. So we also know that with social media, there does come a pretty heavy mental load. Like there's algorithms to keep up with. There's platform features that like change every 5 seconds. There's trends along with like knowing your own marketing strategy and brand strategy. So when it comes to social media, I'd love to know, what do you hear your clients typically say that they're struggling with? Or if you're like open to sharing, what's a challenge that maybe you're facing right now with social?
Yeah, I think a lot of times for my clients, I'll do that first. It's consistency, it's confidence of not wanting to show their face or show up. And I think a lot of that goes back to getting the marketing strategy and the brand strategy. Like once you have all of that foundation, you can show up more consistently and more confidently. And I do think it makes it a lot easier, right? If you have guidelines to follow, then you don't have to overthink and you don't give your mind time to go into that like imposter syndrome. For me, I think my biggest thing is being a designer is I get into like perfectionist mode and I want every single post to be perfect. So then that leans into like, am I showing up consistently as well? Because I take too much time on each visual post.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I love what you said about like how the clarity can really be the tool that allows consistency. because then you have a recipe to follow. You have a framework. You have less of a mental load in terms of like figuring it all out, which is why, I talk with our audience and clients that hiring a social media marketing agency is different than having a VA do your social media, because we are going to start with that clarity, just like you're not going to design a logo or a color palette or anything for somebody until you truly understand their brand strategy, because that clarity is so incredibly important. It's interesting what you said also about your own like perfectionism, because I think most of my audience is high achieving women and we all struggle with that perfectionism. And I think social media is a fun place for us to experiment with. It doesn't have to be perfect. Hopping in stories where it's only going to be up for 24 hours. It's fine. Trial reels where like it's only going to be shown to an audience that's not already following you, but you can get some data out of that. Those are all kind of fun ways to experiment and allow yourself just putting in the reps of letting the perfectionism go, right?
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah. Well, before we wrap up, I do have some kind of fun get to know you questions that we ask all of our guests here on the podcast. And then after we do that, I'll definitely give you an opportunity to share with everyone where they can connect with you and where you're hanging out online. But we're going to dive into these few kind of fun, quick questions. Just tell me what comes to mind first. Okay.
Okay.
So the first one I'd love to know is, what are you currently reading?
So I'm kind of into romance smut books. So I'm reading it's like a Marked series. It's like romance. It's all these guys from like tattoo shops. So they're all like the bad boys.
Oh, that's fun. All right. What are you currently watching? Anything that you're kind of binging on Netflix or anything?
I actually don't watch TV. I just read. I'm on the computer and visually all day. So by the end of the day, I'm just like done with any kind of screen.
Yeah, no, that totally makes sense. All right. What are you listening to? Either podcasts or playlists or audiobooks?
Yeah, I really love Alex Warren right now. And podcasts that I love, it's one called Empower Her by Keisha Get Married. And then We Can Do Hard Things by Glennon Doyle.
Yeah, so good. All right. This is a topic that has come up a lot in conversations in my community. So I love to ask our guests this. How do you, or what have you found the best ways for you are to rest or re-energize yourself outside of the obvious sleep?
Right. Movement is really big for me. Getting outside. I live in Minnesota, so we only can go outside for a certain time of the year. But I recently injured my foot, and so I wasn't able to do any sort of walking or movement for like 2 months. So that really emphasized how important it is for me. And then reading is also kind of how I recharge.
Yeah, I love it. All right. And then finally, a mom supporting brand or solution that you want to amplify. So another mom-owned business that helps moms that you're like, oh my gosh, more people need to know about this. Who do you want to shout out?
Oh gosh, this is hard because all I do is work with moms. Probably my friend Sam from Welcome Mama Co. She is a matrescence educator, which I had never heard of, but it's basically like how there's adolescence and transition. There's also a transition when you become a mom. So I just love all of her education. And she's actually the one that's doing the merch, and it launches on Thursday.
Yes. And Sam and I actually did an interview for the podcast. I can't remember as we're recording this, like whose episode is going to air first, but yes, she is a podcast guest as well.
Oh, so fun. I love that.
Yes. I had never heard of matrescence either, but it was like, duh, like what a great term to know and understand.
I know, life-changing.
Yeah. So the last thing is, what is maybe one piece of encouragement that you'd give to another CEO mom listening today who's ready to invest in her business, but maybe feeling a little nervous about taking that next big step?
Gosh, that's hard. I think the main thing is just like any sort of action is action, even if it's messy, even if it's not perfect, like just taking one small baby step. So maybe that's just getting on a discovery call with a designer or web designer. You're not locked in, right? It's just a conversation. So I would just start there.
Yeah, that's such a great point, that one step doesn't mean that you're like completing the whole marathon. Like, let's just take a step and see how it feels. I love that. Yeah. Well, Bethany, I'm so excited to have had you on the podcast today and really enjoyed our conversation. If people are interested in learning more about what you do, how you serve mom CEOs, where do you hang out online and where can they connect with you to learn more?
Yeah, they can find me on Instagram. That's mainly where I am, at Wildbloom Creative Studio. And my website is in the works. So just find me on Instagram.
Oh my gosh. Is that not like the most common thing ever that what we do for our clients, we have such a hard time getting done for ourselves.
Oh, I know. I'm like, oh, I'm a web designer that doesn't have a website. But
Yes, I was so good and consistent with my social media for like 2 or 3 months, and then all of a sudden got really busy and got really inconsistent in posting again. And so I'm like, listen, I get it. This is the whole reason that we bring on support, because even as business owners and experts in what we do, sometimes you just need more help, right?
right. I think outsourcing is magic, and I'm considering outsourcing my own.
Yeah, I totally get it. Well, thank you again for being here. This was so much fun, and I enjoyed our conversation today.
Thank you for having me.
Bethany's heart for helping moms build brands that actually work for their lives is so refreshing. And I hope this conversation gave you a few mindset shifts and tactical tips you can take action on today. If you're ready to build a brand that supports your next season of growth and you're craving real community while you do it, make sure you join us in our next social media mixer. It's a casual, connection-focused event where we have conversations similar to the one that you just listened to with other business owners who understand the highs and lows of marketing, the mental load of motherhood, and honestly, you'll leave with some fresh ideas and maybe even some collaborations. And it's fun, I promise. You can find all the details in the link in the show notes, or head to theconsistencycorner.com/mixer to get all the details and register for our next event. Thanks again for tuning into the Consistency Corner podcast, where we talk about social media strategy and marketing to moms. And until next time, keep showing up with clarity, confidence, and of course, consistency.